There is a brutal, undeniable reality about the Indiana Fever coaching staff that Stephanie White desperately tries to hide from every single person watching this team. For months, Caitlin Clark has been forced to execute an offensive scheme so catastrophically broken, so fundamentally incompatible with her skill set, that the league's most explosive offensive weapon spent an entire first quarter watching her team score 6 points. 6 points. And for the first time since she arrived in this league, Caitlin Clark walked into a post-game press conference and said the quiet part out loud. She looked directly into the camera and told the world that the schemes need to be better. That is not player speak. That is not diplomatic. That is a franchise cornerstone publicly calling out her head coach's game plan as inadequate, and the entire power structure in Indianapolis just shifted. Welcome back. This is Hoops Vision, and today we are documenting the moment Caitlin Clark stopped playing nice with the coaching incompetence that has been sabotaging her brilliance since day one of this season. Before I walk you through exactly what Caitlin said and why it matters, I need you to understand the context that the mainstream media has been deliberately ignoring. Stephanie White was brought in with one job. 1. Build an offense around the most gifted playmaker and scorer to enter this league in a generation. And what did she do? She installed a system that asks Caitlin Clark to stand in the corner and watch Kelsey Mitchell run isolation after isolation. She designed a first-quarter offense against the Phoenix Mercury that generated 6 points, not 6 field goals. 6 total points. The Fever were down 16 after one quarter, and Caitlin Clark spent half of those 12 minutes watching teammates brick contested mid-range jumpers while she was parked 25 feet from the basket. That is not coaching, that is malpractice. And Caitlin Clark just told you that herself. Let me take you through what happened in this game because the final score does not even begin to tell the real story. Indiana eventually won, yes, but they won in spite of Stephanie White's scheme, not because of it. The Fever came out in the first quarter running an offensive set that looked like it was drawn up for a team that did not have Caitlin Clark on the roster. 6 points in the opening quarter, 16-point deficit. Caitlin was asked after the game how the team withstood that kind of adversity, and here is what she said, word for word. She said they bounced back after a first quarter where they only scored 6 points, and then she pivoted immediately to talk about how they could do a better job in their schemes and what they are trying to do scout-wise. Let me say that again so it sinks in. Caitlin Clark, in a post-game press conference after a win, used her media availability to tell the world that the coaching schemes need to improve. That is not a throwaway line. That is a calculated, deliberate public statement from a player who has spent her entire rookie season absorbing blame for losses that were never her fault, watching her coach point fingers at everyone except herself, and she is done being quiet about it. Stephanie White has been running an offense this season that treats Caitlin Clark like a role player. She has been yelling at her from the sideline to pass the ball, as if Caitlin is Kelsey Mitchell, as if the player who led the NCAA in scoring and assists for 2 straight years does not understand how to run an offense. And the scheme White installed for this Phoenix game was so fundamentally broken that the Fever scored 6 points in 12 minutes. 6. The Mercury went up 16. The building was ready to turn the game off. And Caitlin had to go rogue in the second and third quarters, had to ignore the play calls and just play her game, in order to drag this team back into contention. She said it herself. She said the team rebounded, pushed in transition, and played good defense. Notice what is missing from that list. Notice she did not credit the offensive scheme, she credited effort, hustle, the things players do when the coaching fails them. And then she said it again. She said, and I am quoting her directly here, that they could do a little bit better job in their schemes. She said they play Phoenix again in a day, so they will go back to the drawing board and come up with another plan. Another plan. That means the first plan was insufficient. That means the scheme Stephanie White brought into this game did not work. And Caitlin Clark just told the entire basketball world that on camera. Let me be entirely clear with you right now. This is not normal. Franchise players do not publicly critique their head coach's game plan after a win unless the situation has become unavoidable. Caitlin Clark is not a complainer. She is not someone who throws her coach under the bus for no reason. She spent her entire rookie year getting hammered by opposing defenders, absorbing flagrant fouls, getting knocked to the floor over and over and over again, and she never once blamed her teammates for not protecting her. She never once called out the officials for letting it happen. She kept her head down and played. But this is different. This is Caitlin Clark drawing a line in the sand and telling Stephanie White that the offensive incompetence has to stop. And she did not stop there. She addressed something else that has been festering for months, something that every single person who has watched this team play has been screaming about since last season. She finally acknowledged that she has teammates willing to stand up for her now. She said it is nice to have a teammate like that, someone who will go to battle for their teammates. And the reason that statement matters, the reason it should make every Fever fan furious, is because it confirms what we all watched happen for an entire year. Caitlin Clark spent her rookie season getting targeted, getting fouled, getting physically brutalized by opposing players, and her teammates did absolutely nothing. Kelsey Mitchell turned into Stevie Wonder every single time someone took a swing at Caitlin, did not see a thing. Aaliyah Boston, same story. Nalissa Smith, invisible. For months, Caitlin absorbed contact that would have gotten other players ejected, and not one of her teammates stepped up to send a message. Not one. The only exception was Sophie Cunningham, and she plays for the other team. Sophie was the one who finally got in someone's face last year during a game against the Connecticut Sun, and even then it was not a Fever player doing it. It was an opponent showing Caitlin more respect than her own roster. But now, finally, Caitlin has Myisha Hines-Allen. She has a teammate who is not afraid to get physical, who is not afraid to pick up a technical foul if it means protecting the franchise. And Caitlin said it out loud. She said she appreciates having someone willing to have her back. That is an indictment. That is Caitlin Clark telling you that for over a year she did not have that. She was out there alone, getting hammered, and her own teammates watched it happen in silence. And the league did nothing. The officials did nothing. Stephanie White did nothing. You want to know how bad the officiating situation has gotten? Caitlin Clark picked up her 5th technical foul of the season in this game. Her 5th. And what did she get it for? Clapping. I am not making this up. Caitlin said it herself in the press conference. She said the official told her she got the technical for clapping and instigating. Clapping? Let me repeat that so you understand how absolutely ridiculous this is. Caitlin Clark, the player who has absorbed more uncalled flagrant fouls than anyone else in this league, got a technical foul for clapping her hands. She is now 1 technical away from an automatic suspension. 1. And she got there because an official decided that clapping was instigating. Meanwhile, Phoenix Mercury players were throwing elbows, getting into scuffles, doing everything except playing basketball, and they walked away with fewer technicals than Caitlin did. Caitlin said it herself. She said if anything, the officials should have split the technicals evenly between both teams, but that is not what happened. She got punished. Phoenix did not. And Caitlin told the official, to her face, that if clapping gets you a technical foul, then you just do not like competitive basketball. That is a direct quote. She said, "You just do not like competitive basketball." And that is the truth. The WNBA has created an officiating environment where the league's biggest star, the player who is single-handedly driving ratings and attendance to record levels, is getting penalized for showing emotion while her opponents are allowed to play physical, borderline dirty basketball with zero consequences. Caitlin said she is going to keep playing with emotion and passion, and if they want to give her a technical for that, so be it. That is their choice. But she also said the league office can come back and review that play, and she would love to hear their reasoning for why she got a technical and Phoenix players did not. She is daring them. She is putting the WNBA front office on notice and telling them to explain themselves, because the double standard is glaring and everyone watching can see it. And here is the part that should terrify Stephanie White. Caitlin is not backing down. She is not going to sit quietly and let bad coaching and bad officiating destroy her season. She just went on record on camera and told the world that the schemes need to be better. She told the world that she appreciates having teammates who will finally protect her. She told the world that the officials are targeting her with ridiculous technical fouls. She said all of that out loud in a post-game press conference after a win. That is not a player who is trying to keep the peace. That is a player who is done being silent. Let me walk you through what Stephanie White has actually accomplished this season, because the numbers do not lie. The Fever have one of the most talented rosters in the league. They have Caitlin Clark, the Rookie of the Year and an All-Star starter. They have Aaliyah Boston, a former Rookie of the Year herself. They have Kelsey Mitchell, one of the best pure scorers in the WNBA. They have Nalissa Smith, a high-level rebounder and finisher. And with all of that talent, Stephanie White designed a first-quarter offense that scored 6 points against Phoenix. 6. That is not a personnel problem. That is a coaching problem. And Caitlin Clark just told you that. The scheme White is running does not maximize Caitlin's strengths. It does not put her in pick-and-roll actions where she can create for others. It does not give her the ball in transition where she is most dangerous. It does not space the floor properly to let her operate. Instead, it asks her to stand in the corner and watch Kelsey Mitchell dribble the air out of the ball. It asks her to defer. It asks her to play small. And when the offense inevitably stalls out and the Fever fall behind by double digits, Caitlin has to abandon the scheme entirely and just go win the game herself. That is what happened in this Phoenix game. The Fever were down 16 after one quarter because Stephanie White's scheme failed. Caitlin had to take over in the second and third quarters, had to play her game instead of the coach's game, and that is the only reason Indiana came back and won. And then, in the post-game presser, Caitlin made sure everyone knew it. She said the schemes need to be better. She said they are going back to the drawing board. She said it on camera with the entire basketball world watching. Stephanie White has been coaching in this league for years. She knows what a functional offense looks like. She knows how to design plays that get her best player open looks. And yet she is choosing not to do that. She is choosing to run an offense that marginalizes Caitlin Clark, that limits her touches, that forces her to play within a system that does not fit her skill set. And the question every single Fever fan needs to be asking right now is why? Why would you bring in the most talented offensive player in a generation and then refuse to build an offense around her? Why would you watch your team score 6 points in a quarter and not make adjustments? Why would you let your franchise player get hammered by opponents for an entire season without stepping in to protect her? Why would you design a game plan so broken that your own star has to publicly call it out in order to force change? The answer is simple. Stephanie White is in over her head. She is not capable of coaching a team built around Caitlin Clark, because coaching Caitlin requires letting go of control, trusting your best player to make the right reads, and designing a system that empowers her instead of restricting her. And Stephanie White cannot do that. She wants to run her system, her way, regardless of whether it fits the personnel. And Caitlin Clark just told her, in the most diplomatic way possible, that it is not working. Now let me address the officiating disaster because it ties directly into the coaching failure. Caitlin is one technical foul away from an automatic suspension, and she got to 5 technicals because the officials have been targeting her all season for showing the same competitive fire that every other star in this league is allowed to display without consequence. She got a technical in this game for clapping. Meanwhile, players on the Phoenix Mercury were getting into physical altercations, throwing elbows, instigating fights, and they walked away with fewer penalties than Caitlin did. Caitlin said it herself. She said the officials called everything after the scuffle in order to control the game, and the fourth quarter felt like it lasted an hour because of all the stoppages. She said it might have been the longest fourth quarter in WNBA history. And why did it take that long? Because the officials were handing out technicals like candy, trying to regain control of a game that had turned physical, and Caitlin was the one who paid the price. She told the official directly that if clapping is instigating, then you do not like competitive basketball. And she is right. The WNBA has created an environment where their biggest star is being penalized for playing with passion, for celebrating with her teammates, for showing emotion on the court. And at the same time, opposing players are allowed to target her, foul her, knock her to the ground, and face zero consequences. Caitlin said the league office should review the play and explain why she got a technical and Phoenix players did not. She said if they are going to hand out technicals for that situation, they should split them evenly. But they did not. They gave one to Caitlin and let Phoenix walk. And that tells you everything you need to know about how this league is officiating her. The WNBA does not want Caitlin Clark to be Caitlin Clark. They want her to be quiet, polite, deferential. They want her to absorb fouls without complaining. They want her to play within a system that diminishes her instead of showcasing her. And the officials are enforcing that narrative by penalizing her every time she steps outside of it. But Caitlin is not playing along anymore. She just went on record and called out the officiating, she called out the coaching, she called out the lack of protection from her teammates. She said all of it out loud, and she did it after a win, which means this is not about losing. This is about demanding better. This is about refusing to accept mediocrity from the people who are supposed to be supporting her. And here is what happens next. Stephanie White has 2 choices. She can take Caitlin's comments seriously, go back to the drawing board like Caitlin said, and actually design an offense that maximizes her talent. Or she can ignore it, keep running the same broken scheme, and watch Caitlin continue to go rogue in order to win games. And if White chooses option 2, if she refuses to adapt, then this situation is going to get uglier. Because Caitlin Clark is not going to stop speaking up. She just proved that. The Fever play Phoenix again soon. Caitlin said they are going back to the drawing board to come up with another plan. That means Stephanie White has exactly 1 game to prove she can adjust. 1 game to show that she heard Caitlin's criticism and is willing to change. And if the Fever come out in that next game and run the same stagnant isolation-heavy offense that produced 6 points in a quarter, then everyone will know that Stephanie White is not listening. And if that happens, the front office is going to have a decision to make. Because you do not let your franchise cornerstone, the player who is driving every bit of your revenue and attention, publicly call out the coaching staff and then do nothing about it. You do not let Caitlin Clark tell the world that the schemes need to be better and then keep running the same schemes. That is how you lose your star. That is how you destroy a culture. That is how you waste a generational talent. Caitlin also talked about Myisha Hines-Allen, and the way she talked about her tells you everything you need to know about what has been missing from this roster. Caitlin said Myisha was diving on loose balls, finishing through contact, making free throws, rebounding, doing all the little things that gave the Fever extra possessions when the offense was struggling. And then Caitlin said she was really happy for her, really proud of how Myisha played. That is not just praise, that is Caitlin publicly elevating a teammate who is willing to do the dirty work, who is willing to sacrifice her body, who is willing to stand up for her when things get physical. And the reason that matters is because it highlights, by contrast, all the teammates who were not willing to do that. Kelsey Mitchell has been on this roster for years, and she has never once stepped in to protect Caitlin. Aaliyah Boston, same thing. Nalissa Smith, same thing. They have all watched Caitlin get targeted, get fouled, get knocked down, and they have done nothing. But Myisha Hines-Allen has been on the roster for a handful of games, and she is already earning Caitlin's public praise because she is willing to get in someone's face when they come after the franchise. That is leadership. That is what a winning culture looks like. And the fact that it took this long for Caitlin to have a teammate like that is an indictment of everyone who came before. Caitlin said it is nice to have a teammate who will always go to battle for their teammates. Always. That word matters, because it means Caitlin has not always had that. It means she spent an entire rookie season without it, and now that she finally has it, she is making sure everyone knows how much it means to her. Let me also address the technical foul situation one more time, because this is heading toward a crisis. Caitlin is at 5 technicals. The suspension threshold is 7. That means she has 2 left. 2. And if the officials keep handing out technicals for clapping, for showing emotion, for celebrating with her teammates, then Caitlin is going to hit that threshold before the season is over. And when that happens, the WNBA is going to have to explain to the entire basketball world why their biggest star, the player who is selling out arenas and driving record television ratings, is being suspended for competitive fire. Caitlin said she is going to keep playing with emotion and passion, and if the officials want to give her technicals for that, so be it. That is their choice. But she also said the league office should review the play and explain their reasoning. She is forcing the WNBA to defend their officiating on the record. She is putting them in a position where they have to either admit the technical was unjustified or double down and look ridiculous. And I am telling you right now, the WNBA needs to rescind that technical. They need to step in, review the play, and take it off her record. Because if they do not, if they let that technical stand, then they are sending a message to every player in this league that showing emotion will get you penalized. And that is not a league anyone wants to watch. Caitlin told the official that if clapping is instigating, then you do not like competitive basketball. And she is right. The official who gave her that technical does not like competitive basketball. They like control. They like compliance. They like players who stay quiet and do not challenge them. And Caitlin Clark is none of those things. She is fire, she is passion, she is everything that makes basketball worth watching. And the officials are trying to legislate that out of her game. But it is not going to work. Because Caitlin just told you she is not changing, she is going to keep playing with emotion, she is going to keep celebrating, she is going to keep demanding better from her coaches, her teammates, and the league. And if the officials want to suspend her for that, then they are going to have to live with the fallout. Now let me bring this full circle, because everything I just walked you through connects to one central point. Caitlin Clark is done being quiet. She is done accepting bad coaching. She is done accepting bad officiating. She is done watching her teammates stand by while she gets targeted. She just went on camera and said all of that out loud, and the entire WNBA is going to have to respond. Stephanie White is going to have to prove she can design a better offensive scheme. The officials are going to have to explain why Caitlin got a technical for clapping. The front office is going to have to decide whether they are going to protect their franchise player or keep letting her get penalized for being great. And Caitlin's teammates are going to have to decide whether they are going to follow Myisha Hines-Allen's lead and start standing up for their star or keep turning a blind eye like they have been. This is the inflection point. This is the moment where the Indiana Fever either commit to building around Caitlin Clark the right way or they watch her brilliance get wasted by incompetence. And Caitlin just made it clear which path she expects them to take. I am going to put my name on this. If Stephanie White comes out in the next game against Phoenix and runs the same broken offensive scheme, if she does not make meaningful adjustments to get Caitlin more touches in better positions, then this coaching situation is going to become untenable. Caitlin has already gone on record calling out the schemes. If White ignores that and keeps doing the same thing, then the front office is going to have to step in. Because you do not let your franchise player publicly demand better coaching and then do nothing about it. That is how you lose the locker room. That is how you destroy trust. That is how you waste a generational talent. And if the WNBA does not rescind that technical foul, if they let it stand and Caitlin ends up getting suspended later this season for accumulating 7 technicals, then the league is going to have a full-blown credibility crisis on their hands. Because the entire basketball world is going to ask how the player who is driving all of your growth, all of your revenue, all of your attention is being punished for playing with the same competitive fire that every other star in the league is allowed to display. Caitlin Clark just drew a line in the sand. She told Stephanie White the schemes need to be better. She told the officials they are targeting her unfairly. she told her teammates she appreciates the ones who are finally willing to protect her. She said all of that on camera in a post-game press conference after a win. That is not a player who is trying to keep the peace. That is a player who is demanding accountability. And the entire Indiana Fever organization is going to have to respond. So here is what I want from every single person watching this video. Drop your most honest take in the comments below. Is Stephanie White capable of designing an offense that actually maximizes Caitlin Clark's talent? Or is this coaching situation already beyond repair? I want every opinion that is willing to commit to one side. No hedging, no maybes, yes or no. Can Stephanie White adjust, or is it time for the Fever to move on? And while you are down there, tell me whether you think the WNBA is going to rescind that technical foul, or if they are going to let it stand and keep targeting Caitlin for showing emotion. Because that decision is going to tell us everything we need to know about how this league actually views their biggest star. Hit the notification bell because this situation is escalating and you are not going to want to miss what happens next. The Fever play Phoenix again soon, and we are going to see whether Stephanie White actually listened to Caitlin's criticism or whether she is going to keep running the same broken scheme. We will see you in the next video.